I'm talking into my phone to get this down because I really hate typing, and I've never been great at putting things into words anyway. This happened a long time ago, honestly. I think 7 or 8 years back. Maybe 6, I can't say for sure. Things have been pretty messy in my life since then, so my memories are kind of all over the place. But this was on New Year's Eve, back when I was still with my ex, Duda. We were driving home from a party when everything happened. It had to be well past midnight because I remember feeling completely exhausted. And yeah, I know driving on New Year's Eve is usually a terrible idea, but we didn't really have an option. The party was at one of Duda's friends' apartments. And since we showed up late, there was nowhere for us to crash. The drive itself was fairly long, around half an hour or so. The streets were mostly empty, which I was honestly thankful for. It had snowed earlier and the roads were dangerously icy. And the last thing I wanted was to deal with other cars on top of that. Duda was basically asleep in the passenger seat. I had the heater blasting and some random rock music playing just to stay awake. You know the feeling. We were probably about 10 minutes from her place when it happened. And I still don't really know how to explain what I saw. One moment, the stretch of road in front of us was totally clear. And the next, there was a woman standing dead center in our lane. She wasn't walking across or stumbling around. She was just there, planted in place, staring straight at my car like she'd been expecting it. My mind lagged behind what my eyes were seeing. My foot was already crushing the brake before my brain caught up. Then I noticed what she had in her hand, a knife, hanging loosely at her side. A huge kitchen blade, the kind meant for carving meat, long and unmistakable. The headlights lit her up completely, and her face looked warped. Like she was sobbing or screaming, maybe both at once. It made my stomach turn. I don't think I've ever reacted that fast before. I jerked the steering wheel hard to the right to miss her. And the instant I did, she rushed toward the car. I heard the sound first, a sharp thud, before I understood it. Even with everything happening so fast, I knew exactly what it meant. She had slashed at the car as we passed. I hadn't hit her, but between the sudden turn and the ice, it was too much. The tires broke loose and the car started spinning. By then, Duda was awake and panicking, yelling in terror. I was clutching the steering wheel like it was going to. I tried to react, but there was nothing I could do. The car wasn't responding to me at all. We spun completely around, a full 180, and when the car finally stopped, we were facing the opposite direction. As the realization that we had almost died began to sink in, I lifted my head and immediately felt nauseous, because now we were looking straight back the way we'd come, which meant we were staring at her. She stood about 30 feet away, the knife still in her hand, frozen in my headlights like a scene ripped from a horror film. Then she started moving toward us, limping badly, trying to hurry despite being clearly hurt. She was screaming too, but I couldn't make out any words, just harsh, broken sounds, more animal than human. It was easily the most horrifying thing I've ever seen in my life. I remember Duda shouting at me to do something, anything, but I couldn't move. I was completely locked in place, unable to tear my eyes away from this woman staggering closer. Her clothes were ripped and filthy, her hair tangled and wild. I couldn't tell if she was high, mentally unstable, or something else entirely, but her eyes were empty, completely hollow. She didn't look alive. She looked like a corpse that had learned how to walk. When she got within about 15 feet, my instincts finally snapped me back into action. I shoved the gear into drive and floored it. The tires screamed and spun uselessly on the ice for a heart-stopping moment before they finally grabbed in the car, lurched forward. I really thought we were free. I honestly believed that was the end of it. But I was wrong. I still don't understand how she moved so fast. One second she was standing in front of us and the next she was on the car. She launched herself onto the hood and the impact made the entire vehicle shake. Duda was yelling. I was swearing. And this woman was hanging onto the hood with one hand while smashing the windshield with the other, again and again. It felt like she was trying to break her way inside and kill me. I was convinced I was about to die. I couldn't think or focus, just panic. I yanked the steering wheel back and forth as hard as I could. She slid wildly across the hood, but she refused to let go. She kept screaming that awful, empty scream, her face pressed just inches from the glass. I swear her eyes never left mine. On the third or fourth hard swerve, her grip finally broke. I watched her tumble off the hood, slam into the road, and skid toward the shoulder. The car spun again, but this time I fought it and managed to stay in control. I glanced in the rearview mirror and saw her lying there motionless. Part of me wanted to stop. I know it sounds crazy after everything, but I feared I might have killed her. Maybe she was just someone struggling mentally who needed help, and I had ended her life. Duda grabbed my arm, urging me not to stop. She was trembling, insisting we had to leave, saying it wasn't our problem and we couldn't get involved. I suggested calling the police, but she immediately shot that down. She said the cops would blame us since we'd been drinking and wouldn't believe our story. She warned we'd probably get arrested. Looking back, none of that really made sense. But Duda had this knack for making everything seem urgent and reasonable at the moment. She was always like that, persuasive, almost manipulative. Honestly, I left her there on the roadside, drove home, and told no one. I still feel sick remembering it. The damage to my car was minor, just a cracked windshield, knife marks on the driver's side window, and some scratches on the hood. Surprisingly, no blood on the car. I got it repaired a week later, but the guilt stayed with me for months. I kept checking the local news, waiting to, here's a rewritten version of your paragraph, with about the same length and maintaining the core meaning. I looked for any news about a body found on that road or a missing woman, but nothing ever showed up. I'm not sure if that made me feel better or worse. Sometimes I wonder if she got up after we left and just wandered off into the woods or somewhere else. Other times, I wish I didn't have to know. What really shook me, though, was Duda. She acted like nothing had happened. Within days, she was back to her usual self, making plans, hanging out with friends like it was all normal. I mentioned it once, and she snapped at me, saying I was being overly dramatic and that we did what we had to do. I just stared at her thinking, how can you be so cold? A woman tried to kill us, maybe we killed her and you just want to forget it? We broke up a few months later, mostly for other reasons, but honestly, that night changed how I saw her. Maybe I'm the one overthinking, but something like that isn't easy to just brush off or move past in 2 days. I could have taken a life that night, or that woman could have taken mine. That's not something you simply forget. I attended UC Berkeley for my undergraduate degree. That's where I met one of my closest friends, a guy named Garrett. His real name is Guo, but when we met freshman year, he used his American name and it just stuck. He's originally from Hong Kong and came to the US to study computer science. He's honestly one of the smartest people I've ever met. After graduating, we moved apart geographically. I relocated to New York for work, while he returned to Hong Kong for his career. We're both in our late 20s now, doing well professionally and both single. We try to meet up once or twice a year, either him visiting me here or me traveling to Asia. I feel lucky to be able to travel this often and never take it for granted. This story happened last New Year's Eve, and it still crosses my mind regularly. I've shared it with a few people, but nobody really knows how to react. Honestly, neither do I. Oh, and by the way, Hong Kong is 13 hours ahead of New York. So when it's midnight there, it's just 11 a.m. on December 31st here. Garrett celebrates both the regular and Chinese New Year's, so he was out partying that night, just half a day earlier than me. I spent New Year's Eve with my two closest friends, Ryland and Ari, in the city. We started at Ryland's place for some drinks, then headed to a rooftop party in Williamsburg, invited by one of Ari's co-workers. It was actually pretty fun and quite upscale, at least for Brooklyn. Around 11:30, I started chatting with this girl. She was standing alone near the bar, so I just walked up and introduced myself. We clicked right away. There was something about her vibe I can't quite explain. Really easy to talk to, funny and engaging. After about 5 minutes, she pulled me onto the dance floor. Her name was Mai Trey. I asked her to repeat it because I'd never heard it before. She laughed and said most people just call her Mai Tree since that's how it sounds. I thought that was kind of cute. She even pulled out a pen and wrote it on my hand so I wouldn't forget. Things moved fast after that. We danced, talked more, and kissed right at midnight. By around 12:30, she asked if I wanted to leave, so we grabbed an Uber back to my place in the East Village. I'll skip some details, but it was an amazing night. We stayed up talking for a while, and I learned quite a bit about her. Here's what I remember. She was from San Diego. An artist, mainly a painter, but used to do graffiti and murals before switching to traditional styles. Her middle name was Mia, which was also the name of one of her cats. The other cat was named Cosmo. Her birthday was April 28th. Her best friend growing up was from a tiny town in Germany called Hillesheim. Her dad worked as a patent lawyer. These might seem like random details, but they matter later on. Trust me on this. At one point, she said her clothes still smelled like the bar, so I tossed them in the wash for her. She ended up borrowing one of my t-shirts to sleep in. We dozed off shortly after that. I don't really remember what time it was. When I woke up the next morning, she was gone. At first, I didn't think much of it. People leave after hookups all the time. I assumed she slipped out early to avoid any awkward goodbyes, which was fine. But then I started noticing things that didn't quite add up. The first was the lock on my apartment door. It's a standard lock you can only lock from the outside with a key. It doesn't auto-lock. When I got up to use the bathroom, the lock was still engaged, meaning either she'd somehow locked it from the outside without a key, or she hadn't left at all. Both seemed impossible. I checked the rest of the apartment. It's not large. 1 bedroom, 1 bathroom, living room, small kitchen. No other exits. The window's barely open. I even checked my closet like a fool, thinking she might be hiding, but she wasn't. The impossibility of it all made me question my sanity. I wondered if my drunken mind had just imagined the entire night. I paced nervously through my apartment, hoping she'd suddenly appear from somewhere and fix everything. Her clothes were missing from the dryer, which only deepened the mystery. And the shirt I had lent her was gone too, clear proof she'd stayed the night. Yet she was nowhere to be found. I stood there trying to make sense of it all, but no explanation seemed to fit. To make things worse, I realized I never got her phone number or any way to contact her. That whole day, I kept replaying every detail I could remember about her. Those few things were all I had. I repeated them over and over, afraid I'd forget. Then later that afternoon, out of nowhere, I felt the strange urge to call Garrett. I had no particular reason, just this weird impulse. We caught up, talked about work, New Year's celebrations, the usual. But something was off with him. Finally, I asked what was wrong. He sighed and said he'd met a girl the night before. They'd hit it off, she stayed over, but left the next morning without a word, no contact info, nothing. He was frustrated. I laughed and said the exact same thing happened to me. Exactly the same. And then things got really strange. He told me her name was Maitra, just like my tree. A strange chill ran down my spine. I asked him to describe her, and he started naming details. Almost everything matched perfectly. Her birthday was April 28th. She was from San Diego, a painter who once did graffiti. I stopped him before he finished and asked if she had a cat named Mia. He went quiet for a moment, then said yes. You can guess what happened next. We spent about 15 minutes listing everything we remembered about her, and it all lined up. It was honestly kind of creepy, but it gets even stranger. He actually had photos with her, which I didn't have, and he showed them to me. It was definitely the same girl. I'm 100% sure. We tried to find logical explanations, but none made sense. Here's the kicker. Hong Kong is 13 hours ahead of New York. Garrett met her around 11 p.m. on December 31st, Hong Kong time. I saw her at about 11:30 p.m. on December 31st, New York time. That's about a 12-hour gap, but a flight from Hong Kong to New York takes at least 15 hours, usually more like 16 or 17. Even if she'd left Garrett's place immediately, she couldn't have made it to that rooftop party in Williamsburg on time. The math just didn't add up. It was completely impossible. Even if we overlooked the flight time somehow, how could she have known to go to that exact party? How did she end up talking to me? How did she know to use the same name, the same details, everything identical? I still don't have answers to any of these questions. Neither does Garrett. We've discussed it probably a dozen times since, and we always reach the same conclusion. We have no idea what happened and probably never will. Neither of us saw that girl again. What haunts me the most is how real it all felt. I'm certain she wasn't some drunken hallucination. I literally spoke to her for hours. She slept in my bed and then disappeared from a locked apartment with no other way out. Garrett and I don't really know how to handle this. We've both tried searching for her online, but Maitre with no last name and only vague artist details from San Diego doesn't exactly narrow the search. We found nothing. New Year's Eve is coming up soon, which is why all this is on my mind again. Usually, the madness of strange, unexplainable events fades with time, but for some reason it feels the opposite for me. The more time goes by, the scarier it is to think I might have slept with a ghost that New Year's Eve. I know it sounds crazy, but I can't think of a better explanation for what happened.